Welcome to the Just a Moment Ago podcast. This past week, I've heard some things, and I want to kind of discuss it here today. One thing that's always bothered me is, when I've heard about younger kids getting involved with drugs and stuff at such an early age, 12, 13, 14. There was a lot of us that did too in our teens, and I for one wish I would have waited longer to understand things better before I started doing stuff. It's really not worth it in those early developmental stages. And you have to think, adults struggle with using drugs and knowing how to use it properly and not in a negative manner. So imagine 12, 13, 14-year-olds trying to understand and using a drug and trying to figure out how to navigate it in a proper way that's not going to take them down a really bad path. So let's jump right in, because there's some big things happening, and there's some big things happening right next door in Minnesota, and let's just discuss it a little bit here. So schools across the nation are becoming much more aware of the opioids and the use, even on school grounds. They're no longer being concerned with the stigmas and the reputation that comes with carrying Narcan on school grounds. And a lot of schools are starting to try either carry it or trying to put in place where they can carry it, and laws are being passed that's allowing schools to have it at the school. The drug that they're trying to get at the schools is Narcan naloxone. It's a fast-acting drug that it reverses the effects of opioids. When the breathing slows down, when the breathing stops, the Narcan can reverse the effects and bring the patient back while help is on the way, and maybe they will start breathing sooner. But I will say that sometimes with the fentanyl, it's taken 2 or 3 of the nasal sprays to bring someone back. In September 2022, California and LA passed a law where the schools could start carrying Narcan. And also in 2022, Iowa passed a law where schools were allowed to carry Narcan. And as of March 2023, many schools in Iowa are carrying Narcan, or they're putting measures in place where they will be carrying Narcan soon. So that's actually really good moving forward. And the other big thing is Wisconsin. The UWs, 11 out of 13 of the UWs in Wisconsin have Narcan boxes on site, on the campuses. So they're taking steps, schools are taking steps, K through 12 schools, colleges are taking steps to try to battle these overdoses from these heavier drugs like fentanyl and heroin, Percocet, and all that type of stuff. Also with the Narcan, if you have the means to carry it, you definitely should. I've heard nurses say they keep it in their purse. I know that it's not practical for everybody to carry it, but if you can, definitely try, because you don't know when you're going to come up on somebody that may be in the middle of an OD. I have personally came up on 2 situations. One where I couldn't do anything because I didn't have it, and 2, the second one where somebody was already had help there when I approached. So it's very important. And then one other thing, when my neighbor passed away, when the cop had it in the car, but when he ran up, he didn't have it on him. He had to run back to the car to get it and then come back to administer it. Unfortunately, he did pass away. It wasn't from an overdose. But the point is that they're not even running up with it. They're coming up and then running back and coming back. That's, all those seconds really matter when it comes to an overdose. And it's definitely hard to wrap your head around such young kids, using such heavy drugs, but you have to look at the culture, look at the music. Right now, the last 10 years, the music, they talk about lean and perkies all the time, Oxycontin, all that kind of stuff. I remember being, when I was in middle school, The Chronic, Dr. Dre, 2001 came out, big pot leaf on the front. That really changes the culture. It really starts to bring people to where they think that now this is fully okay, even though it's still an illegal drug, or they think their favorite musicians are doing it, or actors. So they start to try to emulate, replicate, And what happens is they don't understand that they're not using it like they say. A lot of this is just entertainment. They're picking up on what's trending. A lot of them aren't using or doing what they're saying they're doing, but they got the kids out here using and doing it, and the kids are ODing and dying, getting addicted, ending up in programs. And then your whole life is flipped upside down because you are listening to this. You think that's the right way. There needs to be more education, and we need to stop putting lean and perkies in the songs. But with that being said, schools are definitely joining the fight to try to battle kids ODing, because it is happening on school grounds, and something has to be done to save lives. It is a matter of life and death. So I'm glad to see that laws are being passed and schools are actually taking initiative once they're passed to get involved and get it in their school, regardless of the reputation that comes with it. All right, next, Minnesota legalizes all paraphernalia. I'm going to say it again. Minnesota legalizes all paraphernalia. Before we begin in the Minnesota, Arizona passed a law in 2021 legalizing syringe paraphernalia, but the rest of the paraphernalia laws stayed intact. So that Arizona has syringe paraphernalia laws reformed, but that's it. Minnesota has actually gone and legalized all paraphernalia, and the drugs that are in the paraphernalia, residues, resins, and then if there's something packed or inside of it in the needles and the bowls, anything that's residual, and it's not going to be considered illegal. That paraphernalia with the drug inside will not be an illegal charge. And this public safety bill also allows syringe providers to sell their syringes and get them out to the community with no caps, no limit on how many they can sell, which greatly reduces the risk of disease spread by dirty needles across the city. Allowing syringe providers to provide syringes with no limits reduces the spread of disease by 50% by syringes, and it also creates a situation where that user that goes to get the syringes at the provider is 5 times more likely to go to treatment. So we need to be doing what is pushing people on the right path. If syringe providers is actually getting people to go to treatment because they're going there and they're getting, positive reinforcement, we're here to help, go to treatment, you're going to keep using, and then they end up in treatment. So that's a positive overall. It's believed that the current drug laws, paraphernalia laws, stand in the way of harm reduction services. And in the 70s, the DEA began pushing paraphernalia laws, things of that nature. The only place that didn't was Alaska. Alaska has not made any paraphernalia laws throughout this time, and now Minnesota will join Alaska as the only 2 states to have 0 paraphernalia laws. All paraphernalia and the residue inside will be legal. In my opinion, anything that's getting people on the right path to treatment is, what we should be trying to do. If a syringe provider, if harm reduction services are better served and better able to provide with these laws intact, then that's what should be done. You want to get as many people on a clean, healthy path as possible and slow the spread of disease. Unfortunately, people who use when they're going through withdrawal and things like that, they will share needles. And even, people that you might not expect or that you wouldn't think will go down that path, when withdrawal hits, people will do a lot to get relief. So the goal is to get better and have life be good again. A lot of people, once they get, in a program and they get to that better side, they start to realize how much better life actually is when they're not in active addiction. And third, Minnesota is the 23rd state and the third Midwestern state to legalize recreational adult use marijuana. Michigan, Illinois, and Minnesota are now the 3 Midwestern states to have. In Wisconsin sits as the drinking state still. They just, got to have the drinking going on, I guess. But they, I can feel where Wisconsin probably will follow eventually. You got 3 states around it, and it's like, you're going to sit there as the lonely just bars on every corner, but you don't want to have recreational adult use marijuana. I guess we'll see what kind of revenues it brings for Minnesota. But I do want to read a quote here. What we know right now is prohibition does not work. We've criminalized a lot of folks. We're going to start the expungement process on these records. We have a situation where buying cannabis on the streets is dangerous, Governor Tim Walz said at a signing ceremony Tuesday, adding that adults should be able to make their own decisions around these types of choices. So under the bill, Minnesota residents who are 21 years of age and older will be able to have up to 2 ounces of marijuana flower publicly or up to 2 pounds of marijuana flower at home. So that's a big amount that you're allowed to have for home. And then, to go even out publicly, 2 ounces is quite a large amount too. So it goes into effect August 1st, but they're expecting to take up to 18 months for dispensaries to be open. And also, a lot of the lower level criminal charges are going to automatically be expunged, but they're putting together a review board for the higher level marijuana charges, and those are all going to have to be reviewed. And they said that anywhere from the medium to higher level charges are going to take up to a couple years to get expunged from people's records because there's tens of thousands of cannabis charges in Minnesota. So it's going to take a while to get through all of that. People want these processes to happen so quickly, but once a law is passed, something like this is going to take a while to actually get fully integrated into Minnesota, into the public, where it's a regular thing. The Office of Cannabis Management is going to overlook and oversee the sale of cannabis and the sale of cannabis products in Minnesota. So they do have, a board put together that's going to oversee all of this stuff too, to keep the regulations proper and nobody's going to be slipping through the crack. So those are the, 3 pretty big things actually. You have schools carrying Narcan, you have drug paraphernalia being fully legal in Minnesota, and Minnesota becomes the 23rd state and the 3rd Midwestern state to legalize adult use recreational marijuana. Thank you for listening. Please like and subscribe. Stay happy, stay healthy, stay humble, stay safe. Make good choices for yourself and those around you.